The following is a conversation. It has the features of any conversation, such as imperfectly expressed thoughts, ill-considered opinions, and the notions of several sleep-deprived brains. Try not to get your stethoscope in a twist about it.
Meandering in the margins of medicine, it's the Shortcoat Podcast.
Weird news,
fresh views,
helpful clues, and interviews.
By students, for students.
Subscribe to our weekly show at theshortcoat.com.
Welcome back to the Shortcoat Podcast, the show that gives you an inside look at medical school from the students drinking from that fire hose. It's a production of the University of Iowa Carver College of Medicine. I'm Dave Etler. With me today in the SCP studio, it's MD PhD student Madi Waleem.
Hi.
We've got M2 Jacob Hansen.
Hey.
M2 Zay Edgren.
Hello.
We've got M1 Hend Al-Kalani.
Hi.
And we've got M3 AJ Chowdhury.
Thank you for the consult.
If you thought that was all Shortcoats, well, that's where you'd be very wrong, because we are honored to be joined by none other than Will and Kristin Flanary, better known on social media and their new podcast, Knock Knock Hi, as Dr. and Lady Glaucomflecken. Thank you so much for coming on the show with us.
Oh, we're so excited.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So my co-hosts are medical students. They're very busy people. And so they only sign up each week as they have time. And I will say that this spring has been especially challenging to get people to sign up because they all went off to clinic.
To be on this podcast, you mean?
I mean, to be on the show in general, usually every week. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I see. So every week you just like say, hey, who wants to come on to talk? And then, oh, okay.
Exactly.
Right. So how many did you get? So people actually requested to be on this one. You didn't have to.
Yeah, this was like
pull any teeth.
This was a special show recorded at a special time. So I sent out the invite, and I think there was a brownout in that period because they were stumbling over themselves to get to the online sign-up form. And then afterwards, there was a steady stream of complaints that they didn't get to sign up. And I find it suspicious that they're suddenly all available for a recording.
But let's be fair, Dave. Usually we record on Fridays during the day. It's a Monday in the evening.
Okay.
The time is different.
You're just trying to make me feel better.
Yes, I am.
I'm a little bit jealous.
We love you, Dave.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So thank you for coming on the show. Tell us about the podcast, Knock Knock Hi.
Yeah, it's in its infancy. So we just launched on January 10th. And so, a couple of months into it now. It was a way for us to do more of a long form thing because, people had only seen me for 90 seconds at a time, basically. And so we wanted to do something a little bit longer, have more conversations, have more time to tell jokes, which is something very important to me.
Yes.
If you can believe that. And I wanted to do something with Kristin as well, because we both have a unique perspective on medicine, and me from the physician side and the patient side, and Kristin from the co-patient side, someone who's gone through medical training and education, but also, medical issues. She's been there kind of every step of the way. And so, we wanted to do something that showed off the human side of being in medicine and, through a lot of storytelling and talking about, so at times serious, at times not so serious subjects in medicine. So
we play some games.
Yeah. Just kind of show that, we have, every episode we have a doctor on or some healthcare professional, and we basically just show that doctors are real people and not just people that, memorize the coagulation cascade.
And encourage,
just throw that out there for the M2s,
That's right.
the M1s. I don't even know what year it is you learned that, but I'm sure.
I can get down with that mission of showing the human side of physicians and also med students. I think med students sort of get this reputation like they're geniuses or something like that. And I could tell you that
we do a lot of stupid shit.
Well, that's where most of our guest stories come from. From the years that they were med students or residents, and that's where all the good stuff happens.
There's so many funny stories. Absolutely.
Back in a few years.
Yeah,
it's good stuff.
So, but this is sort of in addition to all of the other stuff that you do.
Yeah, it's I don't know how we find the hours in the day, but
I mean, that was my big question was, did you not have enough to do?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
He sold ophthalmology to me as like, oh, you have great work-life balance. And he got this job where he only works 4 days a week. And then he's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get a whole second career.
Yeah, I kind of ruined it. And basically, because it's like, I do work 4 days a week. I'm very fortunate, to be in ophthalmology. So it does afford me the ability to do all this crazy stuff. But so when I record skits, usually in the evenings, weekends, and then we have this podcast, we basically takes up most of our Monday as well. And so I don't know, we're kind of coming to the end of like the amount of free time we have to actually like devote to stuff. So I don't know how many more projects I can take on, but
4 or 5.
keep doing it.
How much of your work does Jonathan do for you?
Oh, yes, quite a bit. Okay. Actually. You're the social, did you say you're the Jonathan? But certainly don't sell yourself short. You do. I mean, you are short, but you do. Kristin actually doesn't. She's full-time. She's full-time Glaucomflecken at this point. So she's behind the scenes doing a whole bunch of stuff, which is great. But I do have an actual Jonathan. It changes because there's a lot of turnover in Jonathan world. And were any of you prior scribes before you went to med school? I know that's a pretty common thing for people that do work as a scribe before you go into med school. And so basically what happens is there's a lot of turnover. I've had like 5 or 6 different scribes. The one I have right now, she's fantastic. And I do feel bad, though, for people who scribe who are actually named Jonathan, which I have heard from people in that unfortunate situation because I've ruined it for them. They're kind of defined by my character. Wow. Yeah.
They'll be all right.
They will be. They say they like it, but I don't know if I believe it.
So you make fun of the various specialties and the students and the
I do from
admins.
Yes.
It seems like you avoid poking fun at patients, despite your own adventures as a patient. And for anybody not listening, or for anybody listening who does not know, you're a 2-time cancer survivor. You're a survivor of a cardiac arrest. Did you make a conscious decision not to poke fun at patients as much?
Yeah, I early on, even before I had all those health issues, I started doing social media comedy as a resident, and I had seen people get themselves into trouble talking about patients. Yep. And I realized that early on that I really need to just avoid that pitfall just completely, because the last thing that any of us should do on social media, regardless of what you're on social media to do, whether telling jokes or educating or whatever, the last thing that we need to do is undermine the patient-physician relationship. And especially now in the era of misinformation and all kinds of scary things out there. And so in making fun of patients is the easiest way to undermine that trust that we want the general public to have in us. And so fortunately, though, with medicine, there's so many things to make fun of. And I don't even have to go in that direction at all, because by focusing it on kind of the inside baseball of medicine, the interactions between different specialties or some of the strange situations that med students or physicians or trainees or attendings find themselves in, and focusing my humor on those interactions, those relationships, I avoid, the having patients feel slighted, having patients feel like their doctors are making fun of them behind their back. Sure. And so I always, when I'm talking about appropriate use of social media as a medical professional, that's like the biggest takeaway. Is just don't incorporate patients into any of that content. And if you do, just make sure you're being very respectful and not making fun of them or ridiculing them in any way. And you still see people make that mistake. And I just shake my head like, God, man, come on.
Comedy of, it's not funny if you punch down. It's funny if you punch up. And patients are in a vulnerable position. And so that kind of creates that dynamic between a patient and a physician, right? If the physician is making fun of patients, that's punching down.
Yeah. And that's just bullying. It's not funny anymore.
Yeah.
That's the reason why, I'm sure all of you guys probably put on skits at some point in your med school, maybe graduation, you guys do skits, or I don't know, a lot of,
Call it frolics here.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, it's a lot of fun because you're making fun of all the admin and the attendings and everything. But if it was the other way around and your attendings were making fun of you guys in skits, it would be horrifying. So that's the whole punching up versus down thing.
It's still horrifying, by the way.
Yeah, but you can take it.
I remember one year
you deserved it.
I know. I remember one year I was sitting at home. I knew Frolics was going on, and somebody texted me that they just mentioned the Short Coat podcast, and my stomach fell right into my. I was like, "Oh God, what are they saying?" And turned out to be fine. I'm a born catastrophizer, but it was all right.
So going off of punching down, when you're portraying med students or residents or just trainees in general, do you ever feel like you have a fine line that you're trying to stay on the not actually punching down side of when you're making these portrayals?
Yeah, because that's a good question, because yes, I'm not addressing patients, but there's still this hierarchy in medicine, right? And so there's a power dynamic between med students and attendings. And so whenever I do have a skit where there are those different levels represented, so let's say a med student or Bill, the resident, interacting with the neurologist. In the skit, I will have, obviously, the attending sometimes throw insults at the resident, but it's very clear in that vignette that it's the attending who's in the wrong, who's being overly mean or aggressive, and that's where the joke lies. So there's always a message to it that leaves the audience more sympathizing with that person lower on the power dynamic. And because that's my goal with all of these things, is I want whoever I'm making fun of in a video, I want them to come away not feeling taken advantage of, but feeling understood. Like, yes, that is exactly what that's like. Whenever as a med student, I walk in, I immediately find the space behind the trash cans to stand. Yeah, Absolutely. That's me. So that's the feedback I get a lot, like of, oh man, how'd you know that? Like, you totally get it. And it's not people just being angry that I'm making fun of them. And also what helps is that I address everybody pretty equally. So I try not to pick on one specialty in particular. I'm pretty hard on surgery, but they have the egos to withstand a high level of ridicule. So
yeah.
If I can ask, do a lot of your patients know about your social media presence? And if so, does that impact your relationship with them at all?
Some of them do. Now, most of my patients are in their 70s and up. And so not exactly the TikTok generation, but I do have some patients that come in having seen it happens several times a week at this point, that they've seen the videos, and a lot of times they'll mention it, and it's always a wonderful conversation. I love, talking about it. Nobody's ever upset with me. I assume it's just selection bias. They wouldn't make an appointment with me if they did not like my social media presence, but it always accelerates the relationship I have with them. And so in general, they're all very supportive of it, and they enjoy talking about their favorite videos or their favorite characters with me. And so, yeah, I love it. I love when people bring it up. It's a lot of fun.
It was very fun today, Dr. Glaucomflecken. I actually went into the neurology office.
His real name is Flanary.
In my mind.
That's okay. You can call me whatever you want. Dr. J, Will, whatever.
But that whole, even though, you might be poking fun of certain specialties, they can take it pretty well. I went into the neuro workroom today, and they were just like, did you see our candle that we have going? And I'm like, what's that? And lo and behold, there was a Jonathan candle just kind of over the med student workspace. Jonathan was just kind of looking down over us, but I thought it was fun. The fellows and the attendings were the ones that pointed it out. It's just
that's great. Were you excited about having a bunch of Jonathan candles mailed to us? Now we have them around the house. What do you think about that?
It's totally my decor style.
Yeah, we have
pretty good.
That was a fun idea because we've been wanting to do merchandise for quite a while, because people keep asking for Jonathan merch and stuff. And I had a Twitter shout out to Maureen Johnson, who's an author of young adult fiction. And we follow each other on Twitter, and she just out of the blue was like, hey, you should totally do a Jonathan prayer candle. And I was like, ooh, I love that idea. And we just went with it. She hooked me up with a company that does a lot of kind of quirky, strange merchandise.
This is fine dog.
Yeah, This is fine, the dog drinking the coffee, fire surrounding him. Yeah, so they did that. So I was like, okay, I think this is going to be a good fit. And they came out with the candle, and then we also got a bobblehead in the works too. So, more Jonathan merch is coming, which is something I never thought I'd say. But
That's great.
I'll keep my eyes peeled.
I'm glad
the
I'm glad the
bobbleheads.
neurologist. I'm glad the neurologists don't hate me. So I appreciate that they're fans.
Yeah, my attending last week, she was poking fun of some of her other colleagues, and just like she called one a 6-foot walking white matter lesion, and brought tears to my eyes in a good way. That was very. So they definitely know the content just as well as us. So.
Oh, that's good. That's one of my personal favorite lines in my content. Is I was very proud of that when I came up with the 6-foot tall white matter lesion.
It's pretty good.
So
He's looking at me because I'm the harshest critic.
She is,
really,
yeah.
At this point,
Why is it always our wives that are the harshest critics?
No,
because I've heard all the jokes for like 16 years.
Yeah.
So at this point, I could probably write them myself.
She is.
He knows if he can make me laugh, then that's going to be a really good one.
Yeah, I do like to run some things. Sometimes I'm not quite sure how a skit's going to land, or if I'm going to have to find that right balance, right, between like pissing people off and making them laugh. And so if I'm not sure how something comes across, I'll show it to Kristin and get her take. And yeah, she's my barometer for humor.
Do you feel like your style has changed then over the years a lot? That being said.
Yeah, it has changed. I don't know if my style has changed, but
pretty like biting.
Yeah, a little snarky, very dry sense of humor. I grew up on Seinfeld and Letterman, and so like I have like, I'd say I'm probably more a Letterman than Seinfeld, and so I just kind of, that helped mold my sense of humor.
You might be more of a Larry David. You're pretty grouchy.
In real life.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love you too.
That's nice.
But yeah, the content has changed a little bit, and I've transitioned a little bit to doing more advocacy, and I'm sure you've all noticed that, talking more about health insurance and academic publishing, or, whenever there's an injustice in medicine, I try to
I wasn't aware that there were any such things.
Yeah, it's all hunky-dory. Everybody's happy and there's no problems. Yes, no. I really enjoy doing that, especially, making fun of United Healthcare, which is like the granddaddy of them all.
Yeah.
You're never punching down then.
No, see, that's the thing. Like I try to go as hard as humanly possible on the insurance companies, and even naming them. I often name them. And people are always asking me, are you worried that they're going to come after you or something? And I think because it's a comedy video, so it's satire, I have a little bit of legal protection whenever I actually do name them and call them evil and point out all these terrible things that they're doing. Maybe they just don't care. They're like, we're too big. It doesn't matter.
Sitting on their,
say whatever you want.
Sitting on their fat piles of money going,
exactly.
Curse you, Dr.
So yeah, I want everybody should be making fun of them mercilessly.
Do you feel like having the audience has just been a convenient avenue to do this, or has it made you more passionate about it and do more research on it?
Yeah, it's certainly, I get a lot of ideas from the audience actually. And so, whenever I post a video about United Healthcare, I'll get, especially the healthcare related ones, I get thousands of comments across all social media platforms, and I kind of peruse through them. And sometimes I'll get a good idea about, a terrible thing that United or Aetna or Cigna did. Be like, oh, I could turn that into a video. And so I do like getting the feedback because it does help, shape my content a little bit. And then with the kind of more interpersonal medical specialty humor, I got to do a lot more research than I used to do, just because I'm an ophthalmologist. I don't know. I don't have the slightest idea what's going on in hematology.
Me neither.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we have in common, you guys. Yeah. So I'm like pulling up 10-year-old Reddit threads, like, searching, pharmacist pet peeves. What? And like, that's seriously, that's kind of how I do it. And people love complaining on social media about their jobs. So it's,
Shortcoats, we love to hear from you, no matter what it's about. So call us at 347-SHORT-CT with questions, shower thoughts, complaints about your situation, whatever you like. We'll talk about it on the show. I was going to ask you in particular, Kristin, I read on y'all's website that your organization, Glaucomflecken LLC, advocates for people who've experienced medical trauma and critical illness, and you're focused on things like CPR and automatic defibrillator use, which makes sense given your lovely experience with Will's cardiac arrest, as well as working with young people who are affected by cancer and cardiac arrest. So tell me a little bit about that work.
Yeah, Will kind of focuses on the physician side and kind of humanizing doctors. But then through my work, we also focus on humanizing the healthcare system, making it more human than it is. And that comes directly because of our experiences within it as patients, and for me as a co-patient and co-survivor of some of these things. And I really try to get healthcare workers and trainees to understand that these medical events, the healthcare system is so focused on treating disease, but these are people. And these diseases happen to more than just the patient in the bed. It happens to the whole family, whoever is really closely connected to that person, is happening to them as well. And sometimes those people serve as caregivers of the patient when they're home. So sometimes they are also, therapeutic allies, part of the healthcare team, but they're not always seen or treated that way, right? Like, so sometimes you have a wealth of information just sitting right next to the patient, but that person gets totally ignored. But beyond their utility for the healthcare system, they're also somebody who should be seen by the healthcare system, at least in terms of understanding what it is they're going through and helping them, answer their questions, just be a regular human to another human, and, show them some compassion or empathy, help them get connected with whatever part of the healthcare system might be able to help them, whether that's a social worker, a chaplain, a psychologist, whatever. A lot of the time, most of the time, the people connected to the patient are just completely overlooked. And there's nothing that is, structurally in place within the healthcare system to even recognize, let alone help those people. So that's what a lot of that work is about, is just advocating for co-survivors. And then, of course, as you mentioned, the CPR and AED use, trying to educate more people about that and spread awareness for those issues as well.
So it sounds like that was something that was particularly missing from your experience, Kristin.
It was. And, with both cancers, that was the case. And particularly with the cardiac arrest, that was the case. And, I think that was exacerbated by it being during the peak of COVID, and I couldn't be with him in the hospital. And it's just all sorts of horror stories about what I experienced during his cardiac arrest and his care afterward. But that said, we just happen to have a platform, and, some of our story is dramatic and lessons are in the extremes sometimes, but we are definitely not unique in dealing with these issues, especially now after the pandemic. There's going to be so many people who have been traumatized as not just COVID patients, but co-patients or bereaved survivors or co-survivors, because we could not be there during these horrible moments. And it just goes against all of human nature, right? To have your loved one in this situation and not be able to be there to bear witness or to help.
Yeah, I think looking back on it, it's really, I think we did a lot of damage in preventing people from being able to be with their loved ones in the hospital. And, is it really, everybody's just flying by the seat of their pants, right? It was just trying to figure out how to get through that, especially early on in the pandemic. And so you can understand those decisions that were made, but a lot of times, decisions big decisions, have lasting consequences. And, I think that's just one that we're going to look back on and be like, man, that caused a lot of psychological trauma.
Yeah, and I think that's part of my work in trying to raise awareness about co-survivors is that, you can treat us or you can, help us now at the time of the event, and you can probably, mitigate a lot of the damage that might happen, or you can just pay attention to the patient and overlook or ignore the people that are also affected by whatever it is the patient has. And then you're creating, a bigger effect that's going to have downstream effects on your system anyway. I mean, so you can help us now or you can help us later when it's a bigger problem.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have a question about the term co-patient. Is this like the patient's immediate family that goes to the clinic with them, or does this also include like other caretakers, close friends, community members that may also be a support system for a patient going through any kind of severe long-term illness or critical illness?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that the term is still new. And so it kind of means different things to different people right now. For me, it means anybody that is anyone whose lives are affected in, pretty much just as deep of a way as the patient's, right? Anybody whose life is like inextricably connected to that patient, such that their disease, the patient's disease or, situation really impacts their own situation in much the same way as it does the patient, except for the physical part of it being, like I didn't have cancer in my body. My heart didn't stop beating, but cancer very much happened to me too. And the cardiac arrest very much happened to me too. If any of you have partners or, are living with any family members, med school is happening to them too, right? In a very different way than it's happening to you, but nonetheless, it is still happening to them in a very profound way. It affects their life, right? I was along for every single year of training. And, I had to move when he had to move. I didn't have any choice over where we went because it depended on his match. We had to plan our family around, all of these things.
Step one studying.
Exactly. So it's like that, right? Like they're not the ones going through med school, but it's definitely affecting them too. Well, it's the same with patients. But I do think there's kind of like concentric circles, right? And I think there's a model out there. I should find out the name of it, but there's like concentric circles, right? Of the people that are closest to the patient and then people that you're, I think, alluding to of like, they may be involved in the patient's care, but they're maybe not like their direct partner or family member or something. And so the further out you get from the patient, the less it affects that person. But, conversely, the closer in you get, the more it affects them. And it can be very profound.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I was trying to clarify. I guess like my training partner back in college got osteomyelitis in his arm, and I no longer had a training partner after that. And that was really upsetting to me.
Yeah.
You're a wise ass. Did you actually ever get into trouble for your sense of humor during school?
During med school?
Not during school. Not really during any level of training. When I first started doing comedy on social media was in my second year of residency. And in med school, I was writing for Gomer Blog, which is, and now, the website's still there, but I don't think anybody writes any articles anymore for it. But I was also anonymous. And I was anonymous, in med school, and I was writing Gomer Blog articles as Dr. Glaucomflecken. That was when I first came up with that name. And then into residency, I was still tweeting anonymously because I was afraid of like backlash.
Well,
right?
I think that's kind of what I'm getting at is like, I think even, sometimes when I think about this show and how we're all kind of wise asses on the show when we can be, but every once in a while like part of my job on the show is to edit out the things that can get people into trouble.
It's a very important job.
And yes. I hope so far so good, but yeah. It kind of terrifies me a little bit.
I've certainly generated controversy with the things that I've talked about and the jokes that I've told. It never escalated to the point where I was like feared for my ability to finish residency. It was more like I didn't word a joke quite right, and so a group of oncologists got mad at me or stuff like that. You can't tell jokes and talk about very personal things and without ruffling some feathers. And I think that's okay to do as long as you're respectful to people. Like, yeah, I'll make fun of cardiologists and nephrologists, but I don't ridicule like their purpose as physicians and like what they're trying to accomplish in life. And so that goes back to that, like making people, still feel heard and not taken advantage of. And so I've had missteps along the way. I've deleted tweets. I've deleted whole videos before because the point I was trying to make did not come across the way I wanted to make it. Or it got misinterpreted. And it wasn't just one person misinterpreting it. It was like 10, 20, 30 people misinterpreting it. So you got to also learn to like ignore the one or two people.
Yeah.
But if it's like a whole bunch of people that are starting to like it's like the criticism is gaining steam.
Yeah, that's data.
Then you're probably in the wrong, to be honest. And I'm totally fine. I'll accept my mistakes. Like, I'm not going to be perfect. Just like anything in life, this whole medical comedy thing, it's been a learning experience. I figured out what topics I can go after and what topics I should stay away from. And it's been through trial and error. And yeah, I've pissed off a lot of people, but the further I get into this, the fewer people I'm pissing off. I've just gotten better at it. And so that helps.
Do you think there's like one single like controversial tweet or controversial video that you would be willing to like share how you like realized it got misinterpreted or what you learned from it? That might be a controversial question. So like, I get it if not, but
no, it's a good question. In the past, I remember once I tweeted something. This is probably when I was still anonymous. I was probably still a resident. I tweeted something about, patients who are non-compliant with medications, like made a joke about it. I heard about it. I heard all the reasons I shouldn't have posted it from people because people on social media, they'll let you know. You'll get the comments. And so I got all the comments and I listened to that feedback and I was like, okay, this is not an appropriate thing for me to talk about. And you learn from it, right? So that was one example pretty early on. And I've made a video, like I tried to make a video a while back, kind of supporting D students and doctors because of, this long-standing stigma against DOs and that DOs are not as good as MDs, which is clearly not the case. And so I made a video supporting that. We're all physicians and we can all do fantastic work in medicine. But some of the jokes, the things I was saying were being misinterpreted. And I ended up deleting the video, even though most people understood what I was saying. Intent is you can have the best intent, but if it lands wrong to certain people, like that's always also important. So I don't think that I was wrong in making the video. It was more how it landed for people. Yeah. And I didn't want a very important message like that to be misinterpreted. And so I ended up just deleting it, and I'll probably address it, make another one sometime down the road. But that was an example where, it was a minor controversy and one that I listened to the feedback and I, acted on it. And I think people still appreciate that if you can acknowledge your mistakes on social media. And I acknowledged it publicly too. I said, this is why I'm deleting this video. And that was really the end of it. So yeah, there's a couple examples. So I try.
Thank you for sharing.
But it always sucks. Like you never, it really is like to hear from people that like you hurt their feelings or like you said something that offended them or they're more mean about it and start, saying nasty things about you. Like it always sucks to hear that kind of stuff, but sometimes it's warranted. Sometimes it's not. You just have to try to wade through that and figure it out.
I have a question about like why you decided to, because you said you used to post things anonymously and then now obviously we all know who you are. What made you change your mind?
Yeah, well, I graduated residency. No, I mean, I suddenly felt secure in my position as a private practice ophthalmologist and as an eventual owner in my practice. I felt comfortable showing my face and having that be associated with my actual name, even though I still go by Dr. Glaucomflecken everywhere because that's more famous than Dr. Like no one knows my actual name at this point.
I think you also came into your own though with your comedy. Like you had been through most of the mistakes. I mean, you've still had a few, but the bulk of the learning curve had already happened. And so I think you also felt more comfortable in what you were doing.
Yeah, I knew by that point pretty well how to not get myself into trouble. And so it was that compared to the fact that I was no longer under the thumb of a department. You know, I was my own boss. And so I just felt like I had more freedom. Now, looking back, I think the concerns I had were mostly unfounded. Yeah, I said a few things that I really shouldn't have said and I would never say. But I think that we get a little bit overly concerned about that.
Yeah.
And part of it's because for a long time, there's this idea that, you know, it's not professional for doctors to talk about these things.
Yeah.
And to talk about their like emotions and the happy or sad or terrible things that happen to them on a day-to-day basis. Like you can't show that side of yourself because it's not professional.
Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of us are anonymous, because we're afraid of the backlash from doing those types of things. And that's not a wrong thing to, like, you can post about this stuff. We should be posting about this stuff because it humanizes doctors.
Right.
And so that's what I have learned, and try to encourage people. Like you don't have to be anonymous as long as you take care to avoid those certain pitfalls, like making fun of patients or HIPAA violations, stuff like that. But we need the public to see that side of doctors and doctors in training.
By not humanizing doctors, the default there is, and this is what happens, you all get dehumanized, right? You get emotions trained out of you. You get, you know, all these things that are just a natural part of being human and are not good or bad. They're just how we are. You're told to shut those things down. Well, that's impossible. That's not going to help anything. And, you know, now we have big problems with burnout and physician suicide and like serious things.
We need it more than ever now.
Because doctors are humans, you know,
and if you don't talk about it,
be treated as such,
then nothing changes. Like if you don't talk about the things that bother you about medicine, then it's just going to stay that way.
Right.
Exactly.
So remember that, friends, when you reach the point of you're about to apply for your residency programs and you all en masse change your goddamn social media profile names so that I don't know who the hell you are anymore.
You see, it is changing though, because I think especially as the generation that grew up on social media gets to be in leadership positions, it's not going to be as scary that you're going to lose your job by being yourself on social media. So I think it's a thing that's going to change, and it already is changing, because you see more and more med students, pre-meds, residents, you know, having big social media presence. Yeah. So I think, I think it's going to be easier.
By fear, right? If the people in leadership positions don't quite understand all the ins and outs of social media, then they're just going to sort of say, no, just don't do any of it, right? Because we don't know where all the landmines are to step. And so let's just not walk in that field.
So I'm trying to be a nice way of saying the old people don't get social media.
I'm trying.
Sorry, Dave.
I'm trying. Our episode today is sponsored by Panacea Financial, a nationwide digital bank built for doctors by doctors. Panacea Financial is designed for medical students and residents, as it was founded by two doctors that were financially frustrated during their training. Thousands of doctors have used their PRN personal loan to avoid credit cards and have a better way to cover expenses for residency relocation or other life expenses. Panacea's PRN personal loan does not require a cosigner, has no minimum credit score requirement, and has interest rates starting at half of a typical credit card. They also offer a period of no or reduced payments on their PRN personal loan. So go to panaceafinancial.com/matchday to learn more about Panacea and get other helpful information on Matchday, residency transition, and enter their $500 giveaway to those starting residency this year. Panacea Financial is a division of Primis, member FDIC. Thanks, Panacea Financial, for the support. Really appreciate it. Let's get back to the podcast.
So we're in post-match. So I hope all the fourth years have already signed up for their ophthalmology rotation. Very important. See, ophthalmology, dermatology, research elective. That's
round out your year.
I've gotten the advice from several of my classmates because I'm an MSTP, and they're like, when you go back on ophthalmology. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, easy in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sit down in the operating room,
Yeah.
a nice long lunch break that you don't come back from until the next day. It's great.
Yeah, it was great. I just got done with my ophthalmology rotation and all the M3s getting done with step studying. First one back there was just like, it's good to be back.
Ophthalmology.
Just for those reasons that you just
That's
mentioned.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dang, I missed out. I did optho during rotations. I had to
did
do a
too.
slit lamp exam. That was terrifying.
So it's a little bit different at Iowa because you have like a world-class ophthalmology residency program there. So they actually, and having, obviously I went to residency at Iowa, so we had a lot of med students come through, and it's a little bit more formal as far as training and lectures and things. So I guess I should realize that you're actually, if you do an ophthalmology rotation, you're probably gonna have to work at Iowa at least.
Probably still.
Where I went, I was at Dartmouth. We did not have a residency program at the time, so it was just in ophthalmology, yeah. And so it was very much like what do you want to do? No.
It was the Wild West.
Yeah.
I'm neuro-op though, and I was told, hey, go do the slit lamp exam, and I didn't even know how to move the thing into place.
Do you know the tip I always give people? If you don't know what you're doing when you sit down at the slit lamp, the first thing you say is, who messed with this thing? While you're trying to figure out what all the knobs and buttons do. It'll buy you about 45 seconds before the patient realizes you have no idea what you're doing.
I love it that in the slit lamps in the optoplastics clinic is they don't move like in the other clinics.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, world-class facility, everyone here is like, no, it's somebody. Let me grab a piece of wood and jimmy it under,
I know.
under the slit lamp while we take a look at your eye.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about the slit lamp wood blocks. That's right.
Cornerstone of Iowa education. I love it.
They're patented. Yeah.
The opto library is really cool too.
That's where I spent my long lunches, was in the opto library. Yeah.
It's a good place to study.
There's some
/
tomes there.
just get away and hide. That's also a good place to do it.
Well, I was gonna ask you, when you were a resident here, maybe you should share. Were there other places that you hid when you didn't want to be?
Yeah, what are your hiding spots?
What are all your hiding spots?
Yeah, as a resident, I didn't unfortunately get to hide very often. It was mostly hiding from the emergency department. That was where I did, and we took home calls, so it was very easy to get out of there. It was when you're a resident, especially at a place like Iowa's level 1 trauma center, you get it's very busy. So I still have nightmares of seeing eye problem on the ED board 6 times, knowing there's just this onslaught of consults I'm gonna be given. But boy, what an awesome learning experience though. I mean, just the sheer area, the 5 or 6 states that all come to Iowa. It's just, man, you can't beat it for a learning environment for really probably any specialty.
So I actually have a question.
We did a podcast episode recently with Dr. Oding, so if you haven't heard that
Shout
one,
out Tom
definitely
Oding.
check that one out.
He's a former residency program director. Now he's the assistant or something. He's coaching up the next person. But
Doing 100 cataract surgeries a day, just living his best life.
yeah, that's how it is. We love our short 7-minute surgeries.
I don't know if you talked about this before, but how did you come up with your name?
Oh, it's actually Glaucomflecken is actually a thing in ophthalmology.
Oh,
it's like a real word. So it's. I thought to myself, okay, I know I want to have a pseudonym. I realized it was going to be a comedy persona, a comedy account. I was like, okay, well, I'm an ophthalmology resident. That's all I can think about these days is ophthalmology. What's the most ridiculous word in ophthalmology? Well, fortunately, in my field, it's full of ridiculous words. So I had a lot to choose from. And I went with Glaucomflecken, which is a physical exam finding you see in someone who's had an episode of angle closure glaucoma, where you get really high pressure inside the eye. It causes you to have these little grayish white flecks on the surface of the lens inside the eye that are called Glaucomflecken.
Hilarious.
That's
so
amazing.
funny, right?
That's amazing.
It's great, yeah. And so it was either that or Dr. Pseudophacodenesis. And that was a bit of a mouthful, so I went with the Glaucomflecken. Yeah.
That's amazing. I commend you for looking at that and being like, that's going to be what people call me now for the next 20 years.
I had no idea that it would turn into this. I mean, my God, I probably should have chosen an easier name, but it is what it is now. Now I am more famous than the actual Glaucomflecken. Like if you,
I misspelled it. And so now the misspelling is more widely known than the correct.
Well, I did that
spelling.
purposely.
But I'm just, it's not even the correct.
That's true.
You've
Amazing.
just
If you Google Glaucomflecken, you get me. You
Yeah.
don't get the actual thing that you need to know about in the eyeball. So that's kind of fun.
Mariam, anybody have any questions? All right, bring somebody on then. Go ahead, Faith.
Hi, I had a question about what's it like reflecting on the impact you've had on current medical students. Like, for an example, our class group chat is named after you. It's the Glaucomflecken learning community. So what does it feel like to reflect on kind of the impact you're having on the future of medicine?
Oh, that's awesome. Shout out to the Glaucomflecken learning community. I'm sure there's a lot of learning going on. I don't know what kind. You tell me. What kind of an effect am I having? Are people choosing? I would like to think that the slight bump in applications to ophthalmology is because of me. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm going to take credit for it.
I think, I'll give you a minute to think because it seems like you need it. But I think it's bizarre because this is a person who I had to teach that. No, you should wash your sheets sometimes. Like basic.
I was in rough shape as a freshman in college, so she helped me.
Just this futon, disgusting dorm room life.
Now that's
Hey, you married me.
That's exactly.
You married that thing, okay? So.
The futon.
Look, I knew what I was getting, but you fooled all of these people, right?
Weren't we all garbage when we were freshmen?
We were all garbage people, absolutely. At some point in our life, everyone had a garbage person stage. So I think so. Honestly, I don't know. I'd love to hear from you guys. What is that effect? Is it?
Yeah, were you just sit in this room?
Yeah. Is it? Hopefully, I'm not seriously influencing specialty choice with these skits because it's all embellishment, and I have my own biases for or against cardiology. But again, if my impact is that it just helps you guys get through med school, just from a wellness standpoint, that's great. I love that. I love doing that. And so I don't know. You guys want to chime in? What's my impact?
I feel like it's that. And I've been thinking about it the whole time that we've been doing the podcast because we talk about a lot on the podcast that it's kind of a way that we can bring humanities into medicine and talk about why do we do it and what's good about it and also what's bad about it. And I feel like what you do in comedy, what you guys do is art and kind of a way to bring that kind of stuff out and to talk about it. And so I think that's empowering to see somebody who's very successful at doing that and being relatable about it and taking time to do stuff outside of medicine, but still talking about medicine in a relevant way. So I think that we talk about that a lot on the Short Coat podcast. So
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think addressing some of these more serious topics through a lens of humor, it's just the reason that it's grown, my platform has grown, is just because by addressing it through comedy, more people are going to pay attention. You know?
It's more approachable.
It's more approachable. It's more interesting versus me just talking about prior authorizations into a camera. It's
also less
to anybody.
It also probably takes the curse off of some of the criticism a little bit to, if you're funny about it.
Yes, it does. There are some topics, particularly with the healthcare system, that regardless of how funny I am in a skit, I'm going to get a bunch of people arguing with each other about it, about Medicare for all versus socialism versus, capitalism. And it's, I don't know.
I suppose that's better
especially
than not.
TikTok kind of devolves into a bunch of mudslinging at times.
I think it's been a lot of fun for the M1s and future M1s that are out there. Our second semester fresh M1 year, we have a course director who's very infatuated with you. And so it's very fun to see like some of our CAPS, clinical and professional skills course, just being like, oh, we'll tie this into a Dr. Glaucomflecken skit, or like having you pop up in like an exam question. I'm sorry, promotions committee, if I'm violating any sort of rules there. Or just, Dave, maybe we should make a Dr. Glaucomflecken distinction track to go along with the community. I think that can be fun.
Well, see, that's one thing that I've always, and I hope is the case, is that a lot of my videos are kind of time immemorial. Like you could, you know, a med student who's just starting med school like 10 or 15 years from now could still find some of my, you know, skits interesting and relatable. I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be the case. It sounds like new med students coming in or are still interested in some of the videos. And so hopefully, you know, it can kind of just have a life of its own after a while, so that I can stop making skits after a while. I can't do this forever, you guys. And
yeah,
so
you can lean back and just start collecting that sweet YouTube money. Shortcoats, if you're enjoying our conversation today, I'd be grateful if you'd let people know by posting a story on Instagram or Facebook or tweeting about us. And don't forget to tag us in your post.
Thank you.
Speaking of Glaucomflecken academics, we do have a lecture in ophthalmology on the 2-week rotation here that you give. So
my
it's
favorite
a pre-recorded
lecture.
one, but I watched it. It was on.
Oh, I give a lecture?
Yeah, it was a
What did I do?
Zoom
Oh, wow.
on when to call ophthalmology.
Oh, yeah.
Pants patients.
Yeah, I was talking about pants patients. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I gave that to the I think the emergency medicine group. So,
Yeah.
which is probably a lot of it's probably applicable to med students as well. So, oh, good. I'm glad that they're still showing that.
I hope you're getting residuals for it. I mean, geez.
Oh, no.
That-
I jump at the chance to do things for Iowa for the people and places that have given a lot to me. So I'm happy to do stuff like this and talk to other groups. So it's great.
it's a little bit odd though that you've had such an impact because it was never the goal, right? Like your comedy has always just been your hobby. You did it for you.
Yeah, I
did it
did.
as
I
a
just wanted
coping
to.
mechanism.
It was
You
a
did it
coping
because it's fun.
mechanism for like the cancer stuff, but also just because like I have a background in stand-up. I just love making people laugh. I've always been kind of a class clown. So
it's been pretty cool that like just your hobby that you're doing for your own edification could be so helpful to so many people and turn into this whole other thing.
yeah, and the pandemic certainly kind of exploded. That's when, you know, at the height of the pandemic, when I started making videos, like that's when it just really took off, in part because everybody was stuck inside and everybody was on social media. Like the amount of social media engagement, like March, April, May, June of 2020 was like through the roof. It was crazy.
Well, and that was May 2020. So you start making videos in April, and then in May you had your cardiac arrest. So I think that was really just a ploy for more attention.
Yeah, it was all cloud focused. That's why I had my cardiac arrest. So, you know,
It's what the publicist wanted. Is what it sounds like.
you know, they want you to do kind of strange things at times.
I'm taking notes on how to grow the.
Please, nobody
show.
purposefully have a cardiac arrest.
I think one thing that's really interesting with your way of advocacy as like comedy is that, I don't know, I've noticed that like after I watch one of your videos, after laughing, you know, it makes you critically think about something. But like, why is something that way? Like if you watch a video about a med student, like you said, standing behind the trash can for like 6 hours during a surgery, like why? You know, I feel like
It's a question that med students ask themselves a lot.
yeah, because when you're entering something as weird and different and strange as med school, like you have no idea what you're supposed to be doing. So you see what currently happens and you're like, okay, that's what I got to do. But you lose that step of like, why is it done this way? And I think comedy is a great way to make you rethink that.
And write for material, because medical school is absurd. It's all absurd.
Oh yeah, it's not. There's so many strange things that happen, right? Like a lot of my earlier videos were, before I started doing the characters, I was just doing basically like little scenes from med school. Like, you know, the fact that when I was on my core surgery rotation, you know, I got pulled aside. It was on vascular surgery, which was a brutal rotation. And I got pulled aside by the chief resident and was told that I needed to push the automatic door buttons earlier on rounds.
I remember that video. I remember you posting that video.
And that moment just stuck with me. It's like it just nestled into my wherever my long-term memory is. I think it's the hippocampus. I don't know. I'm an ophthalmologist. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like what that was one of those moments. Like, really, this is the type of feedback like I'm getting here, and so I made a video about it like 10 years later, where it's like me like very dramatically like diving toward the ICU open door button.
Yep.
And hitting it just in time so that the surgery team doesn't have to slow down as they make their way through the hospital.
Wow.
So it's
well, this is why this is why workplace comedies are so popular.
Exactly,
because it's
you're right though. At med school, there's so much like just standing all the time. You're just like standing awkwardly in certain situations, or just waiting for your team to release you to say the magic words that you can go home. And I don't know, it's all these like really just strange things that just get passed down. It's like these things have been happening for decades, and it's so funny how we can all relate to the same thing, not just in our country too. This is like worldwide. I get emails and comments from people like, oh, I guess this happens everywhere. And I look and it's like, it's someone in like Cambodia.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, like this is really like medicine culture, and these personalities and the experiences of training in medicine are so universal in a lot of respects.
Mariam, bring somebody on.
Hello, my name is Joe McDonald, and I'm starting my clinical year, and I have been noticing some parallels between some of your characters and real life. And so I was just wondering if you developed any of your material for your characters while at Iowa.
Oh, that's a great question.
Wow.
Oh,
do you want to admit to?
I would say most of the characters come more from my med school experience at Dartmouth.
The ophthalmologist is a pretty good TO.
Yeah, maybe the ophthalmologist a little bit, but I'm trying to remember. I do think I remember seeing some emergency physicians kind of, drinking the like guzzling Diet Coke, and I don't know if they were wearing bicycle helmets, but just being very outdoorsy.
I feel like that's my favorite one, because the ER physician is kind of my favorite one, just because of the bicycle helmet.
But then once you start ophthalmology, you really kind of leave everything else behind. So most of them, the depictions of the characters are from my med school experience.
Let's have another question.
Hi, I'm Olivia. I was just wondering, we get a lot of answers about like the worst parts of our training, and I just wanted to hear from you what your favorite part of your training was. As an N1, I want to know what I have to look forward to, and not just, all the crappy stuff that goes on.
No, that's a great question. So from med school, the thing I really loved about those first 2 years were forming the relationships with my classmates, because those are like some lifelong relationships. Now with COVID, it's been, are you guys doing anything in person anymore?
Sure,
I don't even know.
Yeah, yep.
Are you back in person? Yeah. And I felt so bad for like what, 3 years of, some of your class, some of your the other students in different classes probably, can really relate to the fact that, they couldn't be in person for a long time. Because that was like you're going through such a difficult, academic environment, and you're having to learn so much, and being able to be around your friends and who are doing the same things, and you're commiserating with each other, and you're having parties, you're going out, you're blowing off steam together. That's some of my favorite memories from med school. Were just those like Friday nights, Saturday nights, like hanging out with your friends and fellow students. Going forward, third year, I really enjoyed third year. I came in undifferentiated, and as a med student, like I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And so I just really enjoyed going through the different specialties. Now, some of them I was kind of happy to leave and go on to do something else, but I really tried to keep that open mind and like, okay, I'll learn as much as I can and go from here. And then if I don't like it, I'll just never think about OBGYN ever again. Which
is why I have to play that character.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know much about that. Obviously, like fourth year was a lot of fun, and although for me I was like doing like cancer treatment and stuff, so it was a slightly less fun. But in the end, there's a lot of doom and gloom when it comes to residency, and like I'm sure a lot of people who are fourth years, man, you're probably scared, you're nervous, but God, the amazing things that all of you are going to be doing, like over the next 4 to 5 to 6, if you're a neurosurgeon, 20 years until you finish training. It's incredible. And you don't realize it right now, but intern year is very challenging. It's incredibly difficult. You're going to be like sleep deprived, you're going to be stressed, but you're also going to do fascinating things, and you're going to save lives. You're going to be the most important person in someone's life, and you're going to make a difference. And you are going to do things you never thought were possible. And it's going to be hard to recognize that in the moment, but when you look back on it, you're going to realize what an incredible opportunity it is to be a physician. And just, value that, because it's something that a lot of people don't get to do. And yeah, there's going to be really tough times. Like you're all going to make mistakes, and it's going to make you feel really shitty, but you're going to have so many more successes. And it's really hard to focus on those things because the mistakes hurt, but those successes are what's going to drive you and just keep you going throughout training. And you've all made just an awesome decision just to go into medicine. And then in whatever field you go into, even neurosurgery, it's going to be fantastic.
Mariam, let's take one more, and then I think we have to let these people have their lives back.
Hi, I'm a first-year medical student, and I have a question for both of you. What advice do you have for people who are supporting med students, and what ways can we, as medical students, support them, since our training is obviously having an effect on their lives as well?
I would say similar to the approach I take with co-survivors. My first role as co-survivor was as medical student partner, because that is a big thing that you do and that you get through. And just like you all feel, I'm sure when you're done with med school, you will feel like, ooh, you're a survivor of that. You did it. They feel that way too. And the tough part about being the partner is all the attention goes to, everybody gets really excited, right? Like family members and friends back home or whatever, they get really excited by, oh, you're going to be a doctor. And that sounds so glamorous. And it's a job that everyone understands and, in our society is valued. And so, they get a lot of that attention. And if the other person's doing something, obscure, but equally cool, they're kind of like, well, hey, what about what I'm doing? And then the other thing is that medicine demands so much of your time, and it doesn't care one bit about what else is going on in your life or who else is in your life. And so that person is on their own a lot, right? So I think similar to the co-survivor stuff, the thing that makes the biggest difference is just to be seen and understood. You're not going to be able to fix everything. You're not, you kind of just have to go through the 4 years and get through it, and then go through the next however many years and get through that. But to know that your partner sees you and values you, and even better, if the program also sees the partners and values the role they play, that can make a world of difference. And then to the partners themselves, I would say, make sure you have your own thing happening. Make sure you have your own friends, your own things. It's, doubly as good if you're also friends with, make friends with the other med students as well, right? Go to those parties with your med student and be a part of that, plug into it, but also have your own thing going on, because the person's not going to be there most of the time. So if you're just sitting around waiting for, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever it is, to come home, well, you're going to be there a while. So it's nice to have something else to focus your time on. Like for us, it was nice because I was in graduate school at the same time he was in medical school. So we were both really intently studying. We were both, really engrossed in something. And I had a close group of friends through that, my cohort there, and he had a close group of friends through his cohort. And then sometimes we would hang out with each other's cohorts, and that worked really well. But I think, having your own thing as the partner, and then as the med student, making sure that you are remembering that they're in this also, you know, and,
Yeah.
and seeing and valuing them.
The only thing I'll add to that is if you're hanging out with, if your partner is not in medicine and you're hanging out with a bunch of people who are in medicine, just like, don't talk about medicine.
Yeah,
or try to tone it down a little bit. There's a whole world of topics to discuss that have nothing to do with the Krebs cycle. And so just, just a little variety.
Right, there's not much medical information in them, but it's a lot about like the dynamics, right? As the partner, that was always interesting to hear about, you know, this professor or that attending or whatever, right? And to understand the dynamics between people and between specialty, all of that was really interesting, even as the non-medical partner. But yeah, talking about whatever the curriculum is, it's like, oh,
anatomy lesson.
Can I go home?
Well, before I let you go, Will and Kristin, where can people find out more about the podcast, Knock Knock Hi, and your work?
Yeah, it's called Knock Knock Hi with the Glaucomfleckens. You can find all information on our website, glaucomflecken.com.
And the podcast anywhere.
Podcast is everywhere.
Yeah, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever.
Yep. And so subscribe to that. And then social media, I'm TikTok, YouTube, Twitter.
I feel like that was the dumbest question that I asked.
No, it's okay. No,
on this whole...
we want to plug the podcast for sure, because that's where we're trying to build that up. So yeah, please check it out. It's if you ever wanted to hear us talk for more than like 2 minutes at a time. So
yeah.
We have a Patreon too, if you want to be part of a more private community. We're adamant about having a tier that was really affordable so that people in training could hopefully still participate. So check that out too, see if it's something that interests you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. That's our show. Will and Kristin Flanary, thanks for being on the show with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For having us.
Good luck to everyone.
Madi, Jacob, Hend, Zay, AJ, same to you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
And what kind of macular degenerate would I be if I didn't thank you, Shortcoats, for making us part of your week? If you're new here and you like what you heard today, follow the show wherever fine podcasts are available. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. Thank you to AJ. Thank you for producing the show this week.
You're welcome.
And to Mariam Mansour for wrangling the Zoom feed.
Queen.
And congratulations on matching.
Yay! She's very spicy that she couldn't be on the show today. Guys. The show is made possible by a generous donation by Carver College of Medicine student government and ongoing support from the Writing and Humanities program. Our music is by Dr. Vox and Catmosphere. I'm Dave Etler saying, don't let the bastards get you down. Talk to you in 1 week. Hi, Shortcoats. Look, life in medical education, life in America, life in the world is often difficult. And I often wish I could help. All I have is this podcast, but in my wildest dreams, you have the support you need to lead a life of your choosing. You deserve to be happy, healthy, and successful in whatever ways you define those words. So if you need support because you've experienced racism, discrimination, harassment, mental health crises, I want you to be able to get the help that you need. And so I'm going to put some links in the show notes to some resources that you can use. But the bottom line is that for what it's worth, I see you. I know you're out there. I wish I could do more. Maybe I can in ways that I don't understand yet or know about. But I see you, and I'm glad you're here, and other people are too. This Shortcoat podcast is a proud member of the MedEd Media Network. Inspiration, information, and guidance on your journey to medical school and beyond at mededmedia.com.